Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Lyne. If you haven't seen me present before, then my presentations come with a health and safety warning in a suitable sized font below. My presentation will contain pictures of nude celebrities and other such offensive material. So if you don't like that, you should probably leave now. This is normally where all the women go and the men move to the front row. So feel free to reshuffle as appropriate now. To start things off today, I'm going to be talking about the latest and greatest malicious code and exactly what the bad guys are doing to try and compromise your networks and your computers. In this session, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the high-level trends, but we're also running a session at 1 o'clock in room E5, where I've actually got a laptop with live malware on it, and I'll be doing some demonstrations of exactly the tools that the bad guys use to try and hack us every single day. Now, to start off, I thought I'd better introduce myself and my role at Sophos. So basically, my job is to get the crystal ball out and look into the future and try and figure out what the bad guys are going to do next. If it ends in ization, it's probably in my job. Mobilization, deperimeterization, consumerization, SaaSization. You can do it to anything, really. But I am also a geek. In fact, I used to have hair this terrible. And I'm not quite that ginger, but I'm working on it. And it's only when I was doing a presentation in South Africa about a year ago. Have you ever had, how many of you have presented publicly before? Any of you presented? Yes? Now, you know when you're presenting, sometimes you just hit the mark and everyone knows what you're talking about. You get that beautiful moment. Yeah? Well, I had the best presentation of my life. And I walked off that stage going, brilliant. That could not have gone better. And this guy came up to me and shook my hand and said, that is the best haircut that I've ever seen in my life. When your hair starts to overtake your presentation skills, it's really, really time for a change. Anyway, I've been at Sophos for 7.32 years. Been trying to get decimal time to catch on, but it's not really been working. And over that time, I've seen a massive change in the nature of our attackers. Today in Sophos Labs, we find a new infected web page every 2.31 seconds. An unbelievably large amount of malicious code. Astonishing quantity. But let's step back a little bit and look at how things have evolved to gain a picture of what's happening today. Modern malicious code is quite a terrifying thing. But in the old days, malware used to be fun. In fact, it was more than fun. It was freaking awesome. Malware was cool. There used to be this big green worm. You would get this file via an email, and you'd open it up, and this large green worm like that would appear on your screen. Does anyone here have lots of icons on their desktop? Anyone practice that very good security mechanism? Excellent. If anyone hacks your computer, they won't be able to find your sensitive data amidst the piles of rubbish. It's a good practice, much better than password security. So this green worm would go across the desktop, eating all of the icons before doing a poo in the bottom left-hand corner, and then it would uninstall itself. Or there was the time where our head of PR, Graham Cluley, annoyed a virus writer so much that they took a photo of his face. And when you ran his virus, his face would appear in the screen. And you had to throw coconuts at him to be able to use your computer again. Malware was basically freaking awesome. We loved it. It was creative. But unfortunately, things then got quite a lot more serious. Things moved on to the second wave of malicious code. We started to see the bad guys producing scams designed to steal our money. How many people here have seen a spam message from a Nigerian offering them $63 billion or something ridiculous because they like your face. You, sir, excellent. And you do have a lovely face, so I'm sure it's very plausible. How many people have had that happen to them in real life? Yes, oh, a Nigerian came up to you and in the street and offered you lots of money. Wow, that's amazing. That's never happened to me. You're very lucky. Could you write me a check at the end of the presentation? How about the people who have the Rolex offer? Buy a Rolex for $5. Rolex has got 2 L's in it. Has anyone got a Rolex that I can have a look at? No? One of these days, someone's going to have one and put their hand up in the air. They'll look up and their watch will be gone, and so will I. Anyway, the bad guys started to try and scam us into providing credit card details so they could steal money. And that's largely been what the last 8 or 9 years have been about. Malware called Britney Spears nude and naked sideways.exe, where the user sits there, this gentleman here gets this email and he reads the title and he knows, according to security, he shouldn't click on it, but his finger suspends in the air like a slow motion movie, hovering above the mouse, and he starts to sweat and salivate at the prospect of Britney Spears nude and naked sideways, and eventually temptation gives in and click, and he opens the file, infects the computer, gives away data, and he doesn't get Britney Spears nude and naked sideways, he gets a random picture of a monkey, which is quite disappointing, except for some people who are strange. Anyway, the third wave of malicious code, the third wave of malicious code is what we've been living in for the past 12 to 18 months. And it's all about organized criminal gangs with serious product and serious intent. And there's been a significant change in their behavior. These guys are astronomically well funded and very coordinated. And they've got more resource than most vendors or government agencies can hope to garner. Let's take a look at the statistics. In January 2011, we saw 95,000 individual pieces of malicious code every single day. Unbelievably large quantity of malware. On average, over 2010, we saw 60,000. And the year before that, 20,000 on a bad day, 5,000 on a normal one. So there's been a huge increase in the quantity of malicious code that we're all having to deal with. And it's interesting. Really, Apple literally have electrified products. It's a security mechanism that no one can touch them. If you look back over the history of all time at the quantity of malware, you can see the dinosaurs didn't have much of a problem with viruses. So what on earth are we all doing wrong? Clearly, there's a problem. What's happened is the bad guys are investing in technology. They've developed tools that enable them to create new malicious code every time you hit refresh in the browser. And it's moving at an unbelievable pace. In fact, it's so advanced now that they're selling each other tools. Do you like that? The sassificationization of crime. Do you like sassificationization? Anyone want to call buzzword bingo? No? Worth a go. This is a real website, and it's astonishing. What the bad guys have done is created an in-the-cloud service run by Russian criminals. So you write your virus, and you go to this website, you upload your virus, and then they run it against every antivirus product, and they produce a lovely PDF report with pretty charts, like it was made on a Mac. You know, nice little shadows and 3D reflections, and showing you exactly which antivirus vendors detected you and what you could do to better avoid detection. This is quality assurance in the cloud for criminals. What the hell is wrong with the world? That's just weird, isn't it? And even more strange still, how do they pay for this? Because you wouldn't put your own credit card number in, would you? It's not like there's an honor amongst thieves thing going on here. But these services are very, very advanced. God! It's getting worse as I walk around more. As I get more animated, soon I'll have a heart attack and pass down. Anyway, diverse business models. This one has been around since 2003. Very, very simple. You get an email or you get redirected online from some black search engine optimization to a Canadian pharmacy. I have no idea why we trust Canadians to sell us drugs, but apparently we all do. They're very trustworthy. And you go to this website to buy your Viagra or Cialis or whatever you may have chosen, type in your credit card details, and your product never turns up. Your bank suddenly loses a load of cash. I have one here. I'm just not using it because I'm stupid, but thank you. Your money goes missing and you lose your drugs. You don't ever get them in the post. You basically get scammed. That's been happening for years. But about 12 months ago, we saw a new model. They actually send you the drugs in the post. So you go to this fake website, type in your credit card number, and they send you Viagra. And it works. It was probably one of the more interesting tests we've had to do in Sophos labs. We're kind of used to analysing files. Testing Viagra was a little uncomfortable for us. We had to find, anyway, I won't go into the details, you can fill the gaps in. What's interesting is that they hadn't actually sent Viagra, which is made by a company called Pfizer, they'd sent a cheap Chinese knockoff, but it did have the desired effect. And the objective was to get you to keep coming back, spending money with them. A subscription scam, where if the bank rings you up and asks you whether you meant to spend this money, you're going to say yes, thus avoiding detection. So this shows you the maturity of business models that they're now practicing. Focus on critical national infrastructure. Malicious code used to just target credit card details, but we now see far more serious examples. For example, we saw an attack against a medical institute in the UK, a hospital. And this hospital had a large database of personally identifiable information. Names, addresses, that kind of stuff. And they stole this database. And we were all sitting there kind of going, well, how is that useful? It's very easy to see how you make money from credit cards, but names and addresses? They then started sending out postal letters. Do you all remember post? Yes? It's like email, but unreliable, slow, spray and pray. In the UK, we call it the Royal Mail, because we assume that the Queen gets all of our post, because we certainly never get it. Yeah? You have that here too? Excellent. So they sent out postal letters with logos of the hospital that were treating these terminally ill patients, saying, for £20,000, this was a UK campaign, we can enter you into this experimental trial regime with a 97% recovery rate. Highly illegal, highly targeted, very profitable use of this information to scam people that knew they were dying into giving them money. That's the nature of the threat we're dealing with today. Really quite offensive. Over 2010, we saw some interesting threats as well. Stuxnet, for example. Now, I actually hate talking about Stuxnet because there's been so much speculation and guessing as to where it came from. It got so ridiculous at one point that it kind of went like this. Stuxnet contains a number which, if you multiply by 42 and divide by the number of days since Britney Spears was last on stage singing Hit Me Baby One More Time, and then convert it to hexadecimal, it happens to correlate to the coordinates on a map of the biggest pyramid, which proves that Hitler created Stalin and Stalin created Stuxnet. It makes sense if you don't think about it. Over-speculation in the industry went mad. It was completely insane. But what was interesting about Stuxnet was that we had a threat targeting power stations, command and control infrastructure that for 20 years previously hadn't really been a focus. So whilst it may be overhyped, it does show an interesting change in the motives of our attackers. Right, these are amazing. You know, I was talking about this idea that you had these cloud services where you could go online and test your viruses. Well, the bad guys also sell software products, and they're more SaaS ready than most vendors. Here we have a crime pack, and these crime packs are designed to allow a bad guy to generate exploits to go and compromise computers. So they don't have to do the hard work themselves, they just log into one of these, hit generate, and off they go. Now these products are impressive. They get updates. They come with a subscription business model. They have product support. You can actually call them up and get tips on how better to use their crime pack to compromise people. And they've got really quite attractive user interfaces. There's one of them, iCrime Pack, which looks exactly like a Mac. It's unbelievable. Steve Jobs would be proud. It follows all of the style guidelines. It's quite beautiful. By the way, are there any Mac users here today? Mac user, yes, you look like a Mac user. Yes, I should have known. Sir, do you drink lattes? Latte coffees? You do? Ah. And on Saturdays, do you ever wear a mock turtleneck and chinos? You don't quite dress like Steve Jobs. Statistically speaking, that's improbable as a Mac user. Usually Mac users at least once a week will have to dress up as Steve Jobs. I was doing this presentation once in Singapore to a very large audience, about 1,000 people, and they had very bright lights. I couldn't really see anything. And I asked this question, because I'm running a survey trying to figure out the profile of the Mac user. I'm one too. But if you own a MacBook Air, you drink little espressos with frothy milk on the top, you know, they're much smaller, kind of a petite latte. And this guy stood up in the third row, and he was dressed like Steve Jobs. He looked like Steve Jobs. He had a latte in his right hand and his Mac in his left hand. It was unbelievably cool. But what was particularly fantastic was right next to him, on the left, was a guy with a beard like this. Massive, massive beard. And it would have been perfectly normal for this gentleman to have been carrying around an axe, you know? And this guy just kind of took a look at him, paused for a second and said, FreeBSD, Unix, version 4.7. And he just went, yes, yes. But does anyone have leather pads here? Any leather pads, people? No? Okay, so no one here uses novel netwear then? No? I've got this running theory about how to stereotype users in IT by their appearance, and it's usually quite accurate. Anyone got a tattoo that says VMS? No? That was a real long shot, but one of these days I might get one. Anyway, these products are the driving force behind the increased quantity and quality of malicious code. And what's interesting is if you look at these products, you can see that they've moved away from targeting the conventional Microsoft operating system exploits. And they're going after applications like Adobe PDF, Internet Explorer, Firefox, Java, and Flash. And the reason for that is simple. If you go to any business and you ask when a given Microsoft patch was deployed, it may take a day, it may take 30 days, depending on the maturity of the processes, but they will know. If you ask any CISO what version of Adobe PDF he's running, he'll either do this and say, I don't know, or he'll set his hair on fire and dive out of the window. That one's never happened, but it would be amazing. The point is, we're not particularly good at keeping track of these extra applications around the browser and keeping tabs on things. And the bad guys know that. So they're targeting these things to exploit users. They're targeting what works. Fake antivirus. Has anyone here seen fake AV? Anyone? Yes, lots. Yeah, it's very popular. Quite astonishing. If imitation is the highest form of flattery, then antivirus vendors should be very flattered indeed. In December last year, we saw 100,000 new samples of fake antivirus alone over the month of December. Astonishing. And they have very attractive user interfaces. They come with product support, and you can call them up, and if you don't mind the thick Russian accent, the quality of support is quite good. We've infiltrated some of the back-end systems these guys use. And there was a case last year where one of these fake AV vendors had actually built a database of their customers, and they had a column for exploitability or gullibility, not of the computer, but of the user. They were profiling how likely the user was to install a new piece of software or follow their advice. And they were following up with them, marketing to them, selling them add-ons, and extracting additional money. They were managing their business and their contacts incredibly effectively. This one is my favorite fake AV ever. And I'll tell you why. Does anyone here watch Star Trek: The Next Generation? Yeah. Excellent. Captain Janeway, Voyager, brilliant. I love it. There's always one. It's usually not a woman, but I'm just saying, you know, stereotypes and all. This is amazing. So does anyone remember Star Trek: The Next Generation? Yeah, there's a few people kind of half admitting to it. Social outcast here, right? Here we go. So there was a computer voice on the Starship Enterprise in Voyager. Very attractive female computer voice. I'm dying here, aren't I? None of you have any idea what I'm talking about, do you? No? Okay. Well, there was a really attractive computer voice. Apparently it was just me. And when you got infected, this thing would say, your computer is infected with this number of pieces of malware, clean up now, with the voice from the Starship Enterprise. It was amazing. And then you would type in your credit card number. This is the amazing thing. It used to be free to get infected with a virus. Now, people actually pay to get infected with a virus. They pay malware authors $29, $3 less than a license of McAfee, to install malicious code and have their data stolen or have pictures of their girlfriend nude taken because they keep their laptop in their bedroom conveniently open at the right times of day. People pay for that. What on earth is wrong with the world? Seriously. Sorry. Got a bit overexcited there. Anyway, fake antivirus. The interesting thing is, it's not just happening on Windows. We also see it happening on the Mac platform. Here you can see a copy of the immunizator. It's a good product name, isn't it? You have to admit. It's much better than Sophos antivirus. Yeah, it's quite a boring name. A number of years ago, we tried to change our product name because we do all this other stuff like encryption and DLP, and so antivirus was a bit of an undersell. So we changed it, and overnight, sales plummeted through the floor because everyone searches for antivirus. So we changed it back, no problem, crisis averted. I did propose to the board that we could call it Sophos Antivirus XXX Pamela Anderson. I guess I'm lucky to be here today presenting. Anyway, this is a great looking product for the Mac. Comes localized in 26 different languages at this point. Product support, very, very convincing. I'm sure you could agree as a Mac user, this looks like a good application. mobile devices. Now, these are interesting, and we've got a real problem here. For the last 7 or 8 years, certain parts of the security industry have run around with their hands in the air screaming, saying, this is the year that all of the malware will move from Windows and start attacking mobiles. And every year, nothing happens except some guy in Finland accidentally sharing a V-card. Who cares? But what we've started to see over 2010 and early in 2011 is actual examples of malicious code targeting these platforms. And the message is, it's not that these devices are eminently secure. It's not that they're magically good at defending themselves against malware. Actually, they're a bit like Windows 95. Do you remember Windows 95? I still have scars across my back from Windows 95. And I used to take my shirt off and show people in the middle of my presentation, but I'm now banned from entering France, which is arguably good or bad, I don't know. Anyway, these things are actually quite insecure. And the reason they haven't been compromised is not because they're fundamentally better, but because until recently, none of us were really putting any interesting data on these devices. But that's changed. We're all using these things as a replacement for part of the day for our laptops, making them a viable target. So we're starting to see malicious code here. But even more fundamentally, we all need to make sure we're taking care of the basics, making sure we've got good password complexity, using encryption, keeping these devices patched and up to date. If you have an iPhone, make sure that as soon as possible you update to iOS 4.3 that was just released. It fixes a number of vulnerabilities which can be used to run malicious code on your device just by sending you an image or getting you to view a web page. Now, the language is in nice small print in the update code when you go to Apple's website, but go and apply that now. If you've got an iPhone 3G as opposed to a 3GS or 4, you're out of luck because Apple aren't going to be releasing those security fixes on those devices. So start screaming and making a noise on Twitter or buy a new phone. The iPhone 4 is quite sexy and aluminium-y and it's nice, isn't it? But if you're using an iPhone, you have to drink cappuccino. That's the rule, not a latte. Different coffees for different Mac products. iPad is definitely a green tea affair. Sitting in the sofa, lounging, using your iPad, drinking your green tea. Yes? You agree? Excellent. No? Not agree. What would you drink whilst using your iPad? Would you drink tea, coffee, orange juice, perhaps some kind of Kool-Aid? Anyway, so we've got to watch out for these devices, okay? They're going to be a problem too. Now, I've talked a lot about malicious code, and for those of you that are worrying that I'm talking too much, don't worry, I'm nearly finished. But things get really exciting from here. I'll warm up. So, social media. Only 3 years ago, most of us were trying to block this stuff, saying there is never any reason that anyone would want to use social media for work purposes. Today, many of us have people in our businesses whose sole job it is to make use of social media. I talked to an investment banker last week who was telling me that if they blocked social media, they genuinely believed they would struggle to bring in the latest talent from universities. They'd struggle to secure candidates. An astonishing concept, but actually potentially valid. But social media and high-grade social engineering is also something that we need to be watching for. Here you can see one of my favorite scams of all time. And you've got to be quite an unusual person to have a favorite scam of all time. Anyway, this page is a Facebook page. And if you sign up you get $25 of brown water. Sorry, coffee. Coffee. Starbucks sell coffee. Let's get that. You have Starbucks in Sweden, don't you? No? Do you know why that is? Because they make terrible coffee. Don't tell anyone. Shh. Anyway, when you go in the real world, imagine this. You're sitting at your desk and a sales guy walks in, okay? And he walks up to you and he does this. And he's got slicked back hair, very greasy, and he's got one of those skinny ties. You know, not the normal ties, but the skinny cool ones. And it's purple, and it's got little orange dots on it, okay? And he comes up to you and he says, "I'll be honest with you." What do we all immediately think? Yes, I'm about to lie to your face. That's what we all think, don't we? In the real world, we've got these rules for how we interact with people and whether we trust them. But in the digital world, we ignore all of that. The very first sentence on this page, this is not a scam. So what is it? It's a scam. Of course it is. I'll be honest with you. Anyway, let's take a look at the instructions. Number 1, click join. Number 2, share. 3, invite people to join. 4, erase everything in your address bar. That's where facebook.com is typed. Now, copy and paste this code into your address bar and hit enter. Note, this won't work on Internet Explorer, only Mozilla, Firefox and Safari. Hey, there's a first time for everything, isn't there? People actually copy the ugly, weird-looking code from the page and run it. This virus writer was too lazy to write a virus. They asked people to run it, and people did. What on earth is wrong with the world? That shows you how basic a problem we can have in acceptable use. 6, visit our official site and follow the instructions, which for some reason is greyed out for security purposes. No, note this. There's a logo here that says zero fraud tolerance. Now, it's good to know that this Russian criminal gang aren't going to be fraudulent and share all of our personal details with the Chinese hacking gang. That's reassuring. And clearly there's a padlock, so it must be safe. So you type in your name, your address, your city, all your details, giving away in 3 minutes, in your morning attempt to get a caffeine kick, access to your computer, access to your social media, your personal information, and potentially compromise your friends so that there will be no one there to take you down to the pub and make you feel better about the fact that your life is bad. So we've got far more serious malware today. We've got people focusing on the critical national infrastructure. I did want to point out, however, the pranksters are not dead. And whilst this stuff is quite funny, actually it's freaking hilarious, it is a serious crime nonetheless. Here you can see a street sign in America where someone has reprogrammed the traffic sign to, instead of providing useful instructions on how to get around this traffic issue, they've reprogrammed it with poop, smiley, lol. They also programmed it at a separate point with warning, zombies ahead. I was committed to not laughing when I said that, but I failed miserably. But this is a serious matter, and it does show that it's about more than the Windows PC. The bad guys, whether it's for this kind of pranktivism or for more sinister purposes, are focusing on a wider spectrum of devices. And what we all need to do is remember that our users have listened to us on certain key security best practices. But we need to make sure that we're constantly updating them and modernizing our awareness programs, because the bad guys are getting very creative in how they attack us. Gone are the days of the simple email campaign. Here is a letter that we received at Sophos Labs, which is a printout of the Nigerian scam. They've sent us a letter with a link at the bottom, which we're supposedly going to type into our browser. And luckily, they've given us a nice short URL, so it won't take us too long to enter it in. Of course, we shredded it and posted it back to them, because we get to have some fun in Sophos Labs. That was high jinks for us. So, I've got to stop ranting now, because I have to catch up, because the first guy ran over, so if you see him later in the day, flame him and throw water at him. Actually, don't do that. Or if you do, send photos to Facebook. What I'm talking about is the requirement to modernize protection. The bad guys have significantly escalated the techniques that they are using against all of us. It is no longer about Britney Spears nude and naked sideways, although you'll still see some of that, hopefully. It's no longer about that. Today, the bad guys have far more sinister intent, and there is a great deal more malicious code out there than there ever has been before. And this problem is going to get worse. Soon we'll have over 150,000, 200,000 individual samples a day. The traditional techniques that we have all used for the past 20 years to keep ourselves safe are buckling and failing. And we've got to find ways to modernize our protection. And critically, we've got to focus on remediation and hardening. With this quantity of malicious code, a reactive approach isn't going to work. We've got to make sure that we're patching Firefox, patching Adobe, all of the applications around it. And we need to move from using content inspection, looking at files and packets, to focusing on reputation and behavior-based technologies if we want to deal with the quantity and quality of modern malicious code. So, to all of you here, get online to sophos.com. There are lots of free tips, videos and practices that you can take, put your logo on, deliver to your users and take credit for. There are sample security policies, videos about password complexity, information on how to get the basics done and keep yourself safe. If we all go back to the office and patch Adobe, PDF and Flash and the browsers, will be making life much, much harder for the bad guys. Because it would be easy to walk away from this presentation thinking that I'm saying the world is going to end, the bad guys are getting smarter and we're all not responding. Actually, my message is different. We need to simplify security and we need to remember that there are a hell of a lot more of us legitimate users here than there are bad guys. The internet is the future of many of our economies. It is a future resource for our children and for education. The bad guys can't have it. Cyber victory. Let's get the job done. Have a fantastic day, and if you'd like to have a more technical geek out session, see some live malware and get into more depth, come for some tech geekery in E5 at 1 o'clock. Otherwise, you've been fantastic, and I'm sorry I bullied you about your Mac. You obviously have fantastic taste in computers and coffee. Have a great day.